Okay, Rhodia paper. What is it and what's all the hype about? I'm gonna tell you in this video. Hey, I'm Becca with the Happy Ever Crafter, and this is gonna be a really quick tutorial, but it's a question I have to address. First, what is Rhodia paper? Rhodia paper is just a really nice, high quality paper, and obviously it comes in a lot of different formats. These are just a few of the ones that I own. Little small packs, you have medium, white cover, black cover, orange cover, super giant ones. But the cool thing about Rodya is the format of the paper itself. So it comes in a grid format like this one. I don't think I even have any of the lined. There's just a normal lined version. There's a blank version, and there's a dot pad. So this one has little dots instead of a grid. It gives you guidelines, but is a little bit less invasive than a grid. So lots of different formats of Rodya. And the reason people really like it is because it's really just a nice high quality paper and it won't fray your brush pens. I have a video all about paper and what fraying means and how to stop your pens from fraying by using good paper. So I'll link to that one up here, but basically all you need to know about Rodya and why people like it is because it's a really nice smooth paper, it's good for your pens, and you can use either brush pens or pointed pen on it for calligraphy. So it's a really great type of paper to practice with. Now, my main preference is the grid format. I always suggest to people if you're doing calligraphy or lettering to always have guidelines on your sheet. So the grid format is great for practicing. If you're doing it on the blank version because you want it to be a more final piece without the ugly grid lines on it, you can put grid pad underneath it. So you can just put your blank page right over top of this and you can see through it. Or just at least draw yourself some guidelines on your blank sheet because you need to be working with guidelines. So the main question I get about Rodya is with the graph version or the dot version, how many squares or how many dots should you be using with different brush pens, like for sizing? How big should you be writing on them? So it depends what kind of pen you're using. If you're using a small pen or a big pen, basically. And if you don't know the difference between a small brush pen and a big brush pen, go watch this video because that's where I explain that. But essentially all you need to know is that the tip sizes are really different. And so obviously if you're using a huge brush pen like this, you're gonna use more squares than if you're using a tiny brush pen like this. So my recommendation generally, if you're using a small brush pen, this is the Tombow Fudenosuke, if you're using a small brush pen, is to use essentially 2 squares for your X height. So let's say you're writing the letter A, you want it to be within those 2 squares. So I would have my letter A fitting in here. Now you obviously can do it bigger if you want. I just like the look of the variation of the thin and the thick if you're writing really small like this. You also can do a 1.5 size, which actually is one of my favorite things to do because I find the squares on these pages are a little bit too big, but 1 square is too small. So you can do a 1.5 here too. Just be really mindful of keeping that guideline consistent. If you're using a big pen, this is a Tombow dual tip. My recommendation is at least 3 squares, usually 4. So if we look at 4 squares, it looks like this. And if we look at 3 squares, it looks like this. Now, my preference is 4 squares. I feel like with big pens, the bigger you work, the easier it's gonna be, especially for beginners. And obviously with these ones, you can also write quite a bit larger if you want to. But for practice, I usually say 4 squares for the big pens. But other than that, guys, using Rodya is pretty easy to understand. The main thing you need to understand though is how to use your pens on Rodya. So if you've never learned about how to actually hold your pens and use brush pens properly to make sure they don't fray, check out this video next and I'll see you over there.